This is a very beginner's tutorial for Photoshop, just showing you how to open your image files and then simply edit them. So I have Photoshop open, and I'm just going to click File, Open, and I save all my photos onto my desktop. So I usually select desktop so I can see my files. Hopefully you have a photography folder that you keep everything really organized in, so it's organized by the assignment, so making a folder for each assignment and saving our photos into there. I'm just going to open another image that I know I have ready. Just double clicking and it will open. So I have a picture of elephants right here. And I'm just going to show you a few tricks to really early stages of manipulation to really bring out the contrast and play with the color. For that, I'm going to go to Image. If I wanted it black and white, I could choose Grayscale under the mode, but I'm going to keep my color, so I'm going to Adjustments. And I noticed that it's quite dark. It's a really dark photo, and so I would like to work with exposure to kind of bring in some lighter areas. So if I click exposure, what exposure really means is the sensitivity of the film to light, and so if I boost my exposure, it's going to lighten up everything in my image. Now, if I overdo it, I'm going to start losing information in these areas. Anytime it becomes so white that you no longer have information, that is way too much. So I'm bringing it back so that I can see texture and detail in every single area. I think that's about right for me. So I'm going to click OK. I can go back up into Image and start to adjust a few other items. I might want to boost the brightness or contrast. So contrast means that your darks are getting darker and your lights are getting lighter. So I think just a little bit of a boost. Now if I go way too high, it might start making it look very unrealistic and that it's obviously over edited. So I'm just boosting it so that it makes my darks a little more dramatic, my lights a little more dramatic, but nothing that looks super unrealistic. I'm going to keep going back into adjustments, and I'm going to this time go into hue and saturation. This plays with my color and the intensity of the color. I don't really want to mess with the hue right now because it probably will make it look a little unrealistic either way. A little too much red, a little too much green. I kind of want to keep those colors realistic. But I might want to boost my saturation just a little bit. If I go too much, it's way blown out. But just a little stronger color, especially if you took a photograph and your color's kind of washed out because of what lighting was around. Just like that. If I wanted to crop this image, there's a couple ways to do it, but I think this is the easiest. Right here on the left side is all of the tools that you can choose, and I'm going to choose the cropping tool that looks like a little box. When I click it, we automatically get a selection here that I can then drag. Now, if I wanted that selection to maintain the aspect ratio, what I mean by that is that it stays the same proportions as this original photo. So if I wanted to maintain that, I would just click my Shift, and I'm holding down the Shift button as I click and drag. And you notice that it stays the same ratio as you drag that in. If I don't hold down my Shift key and I start to drag it, what happens is I can get a little bit like squashed, or I can make it into a square, so it doesn't maintain that proportion that it was. So if I want to crop this, I can click and drag. Maybe I want it that small. And then when I click on the image, I can drag it around so that I can put it exactly where I want it to be. Now you'll notice that this has a grid on it that splits it up into the rule of thirds. We'll talk about rule of thirds later in composition, but one of the main rules is that if you split a picture up into thirds like this, a focal point should be on one of the intersections. Now, I think this eye is a pretty good focal point for me, so maybe editing my photo set so that the eye is on that focal point would make it a bit stronger of a composition. Also, elements can be lined up with these lines, so this trunk kind of following this vertical line is quite a strong composition move, as well as this horizon line where the grass meets the tree is lined up with this horizontal one. So there's ways that we can crop to make it a stronger composition using the rule of thirds. If you want to keep this and apply your crop, you can just hit the Enter key and it will go ahead and crop it for you. I'm just going to go back up to this arrow, which is my move key, and sometimes just to get this crop tool off, I'll click back on the arrow, and now I'm back where I started with a better cropping that makes the photo a bit stronger. If I ever want to go backwards, I can choose Edit, Step Backwards. But if I want to go backwards, let's say I did something a very long time ago and I can't remember how many times, so I don't want to click Edit Backwards a million times, then I can go over to this History button over here that has 3 squares and an arrow. If I click on this, it actually shows me exactly what ones I chose. Let's say I want to get rid of that exposure edit that I did. I could click on it, the specific one, and delete it, and it would, whoops, I don't want to delete crop, I want to delete exposure. There we go. I could click on it and delete it, and that would actually bring me back a step and delete that exposure. I don't want to do that because I think it looks better. So those are some very beginning edits that you can work on with your elements of art. And we will continue to use these buttons, and it'll get a lot easier as it goes. There's a lot more to learn, but that's the very beginning stage.